So you're very, very welcome, everybody, to this very first CA Support Women's Conference, Step Into Your Powers. So we're just about to kick off. So just as a quick introduction and by way of background, we carried out a survey. It was commissioned by the Diversity and Inclusion Committee here at the Institute. And along with lots of very interesting findings, we had respondents, 50% of our female members reported feeling discriminated against based on their gender. So that was kind of the basis of this conference here today, albeit it's only 90 minutes and not like the conferences of old. But we just thought it was worth, highlighting some of these issues, having a chat with some really a stellar lineup and some real experts in their area to see if we can kind of tease out some of these issues and shine a light on them and see if people can come away with some tangible sort of workarounds and tips and tricks to sort of, step into your power or step into their power. So I think we all have our own stories of challenges and obstacles that we've faced along the way, myself included. And I just think back to late 1980s Dublin, and my own father in his wisdom, believing that the boys in my family should be the ones that go to college and myself and my sister should go to secretarial college. So obviously, I understand from a very early age, from my late teenage years, that, maybe I was less than somehow. And my sister and myself, we obviously, took the power back, if you like, and we went to London and we did our own respective academic progression there. And not surprisingly, I did gender politics when I was in London. But it's a little bit depressing to think that over 20 years ago, when I was doing that, that basically we are now really grappling with the same issues that we encountered way back then. So but basically, I think it's going to be great. It's going to be really interesting to hear from our experts, as I say. Award-winning marketer and founder of the Menopause Hub, Loretta, you're very, very welcome. Renowned photographer and self-image educator. I love that phrase, John. So John Murray. Leadership coach, author, lecturer, and all-round women in business champion, Patricia Byron. I'm really excited to hear what these guys have to say. And of course, we have our very own Karen Lanigan from the Institute, head of member experience, coming into the panel at the end to answer your questions. So let's be brave, let's be really honest and open here today, and talk to these experts, get their advice, and see if we can kind of, destigmatize some of the issues that many, many women feel in the workplace today. So I'm just going to quickly run through, if you don't mind, just take this opportunity to go through the support services that we have here in the Institute under the banner of CA Support. So hopefully my slides will move on there. Just bear with me now. Here we go. So CA Support, our mission very simply is to look after the well-being of every member and every student for life, indeed the families of every member and every student for life. So lofty ideals, but we really do try to live up to them. This is how we imagine the lifestyle, or sorry, the life cycle, I should say, of the student and the career into retirement of students and members at the Institute. And along with that sort of life cycle, if you like, you can see along the road plenty of bumps and obstacles. So you might have, exam stress or, workplace issues or diversity challenges. Then you go on to have your family and you have all of those associated work-life balance issues. And then, of course, the returners coming back into the workplace after having their children, confidence, upskilling, childcare, all that good stuff. And then, as you move into retirement, all of those associated issues as well. So we try to address them. We are here for you for all of those steps along the way. And these are the kind of supports that we give. Confidential listening service, that's when you might talk to a member of our team initially. Professional counselling, which is offered by a third party outside, and that's 8 sessions. We do in-house wellness coaching with the team as well, and you can have 3 sessions. And then Karen Lanigan will talk more about the career coaching and the mentoring service that we have. And then, of course, that all-important emergency financial support as well under the banner of CA Support. And then, just as you may well have seen on the website, we have lots of 300 pages, in fact, of content ranging from all sorts of stages in your life. So family issues, personal development, as I say, those diversity challenges, and then all of that sort of well-being stuff, keeping your mind and your body fit. So you're putting your best foot forward in the workplace and outside. And then these webinars as well. You might recognize some of the faces. Indeed, you might have been along to some of the sessions. I hope you have. But really experts in their field again, not unlike today, and making sure that we're bringing you that fresh expertise advice as well in the area of well-being. And then finally, just a little bit of a teaser to let you know that we're going to now be moving all of our wellbeing services over to Thrive, which is the Institute's new wellbeing hub. We're very excited about that, and there'll be more about that in e-news, so keep an eye out on the website and obviously all the usual channels. And this, in the meantime, is where you can find CA support. So I really do encourage you, if you have any issues, be they wellbeing, be they emotional distress, be they bereavement or marriage problems, any of those things that might hit us, please do get in contact. We are here for you during office hours, and then we can help you get the support that you need. So that's enough from me. I am going to hand over now to the first of our speakers, Loretta. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dee, for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm delighted to be here to shed the spotlight on menopause. And it's been a much a taboo subject. And I have to thank Joe Duffy earlier this year, for those of you based in Ireland, radio show programme, very high listenership, and he dedicated 8 days in a row exclusively on his radio show to talking about menopause, and it lifted the lid of menopause for many women in Irish society. So without further ado, I'll start my kind of presentation to you. So my name is Loretta Dignam. I'm the CEO and founder of the Menopause Hub. I set up Ireland's first dedicated menopause clinic in December 2018. It was the only clinic of its kind. It is the only multidisciplinary clinic in Ireland. We have a number of doctors, gynecologists, GPs, urologists. We have a psychologist, we have an acupuncturist, we have a dietitian and nutritionist, and we have a women's health physio. We're an evidence-based clinic, and we're supporting women through their menopause and beyond. In addition to that, the whole area of menopause in the workplace is really important and close to my heart. I've spent over 30 years working in the corporate sector in many multinationals, internationally and in Ireland. I chaired the Gender Equality Committee when I was on the board of the Abbey Theatre, and saw the power of policy change in terms of changing gender equality within the theatre sector and, of course, within the Abbey. So I want to talk to you about menopause, and I can talk to you about this firsthand because a month before I turned 50, which meant I was actually 49, I went through, I had my last period. I didn't know that was my last period until 12 months later. And very soon afterwards, within weeks, I started hot flushes. And they were the only two things I knew about menopause. So hey ho, I could deduce I was menopausal. I felt I was way too young. Surely this is something that happens to women much older in life, in the late 50s, early 60s. Secondly, I knew nothing about menopause and was completely blindsided by the experience. My own experience I found to be, I'd never heard the word perimenopause, so my own experience I found to be quite lonely, quite challenging, a taboo topic. Nobody spoke about it. My friends didn't talk about it. So I felt very alone. I also felt that I was the only person going through this. And I consulted Dr. Google to see what options were available to me. And I found the information so conflicting that I was almost paralyzed by fear about which route to take to help manage my menopause. I also thought that strong women power through, and that I wouldn't need to seek help because otherwise it would be an admission of weakness. I didn't dare mention that I was going through this, even though I was working in the corporate sector and would consider myself to be a reasonably outspoken person. I didn't dare mention this because I was afraid of the implications of age. It would mean I'm old, I'm past it. Maybe I'm, too old to be working in the career I'm in. In addition to that, I was afraid that people would think I was a crazy lady, that I was irrational, or whatever the other negative associations with being menopausal were. So I kept stum. But no more. I'm reaching out to organizations to offer them education and awareness and training to help support women going through this. So I have a presentation that I'd like to share very quickly with you, and obviously there'll be a chance hopefully for Q&A at the end. So Monday, and I know today is not Monday, Monday was World Menopause Day. the 18th of October. And it's a fantastic opportunity to have such days like this because they help shine a light, help break down the taboo and the stigma around these topics. So menopause being one. I liken menopause to mental health about 8 or 10 years ago. Mental health had huge stigma and taboo in society, but also in the workplace. But a lot of organizations, a lot have been work to actually normalize that and bring that out into the mainstream. A lot of support in the workplaces. So I believe a lot of the things that have helped us make that journey on mental health, and we're still not there yet, will help us around menopause. And many organizations already have a mental health program in place and could adapt that for menopause. So why is menopause at work important or relevant? And why is menopause important? Well, by 2030, there will be 1.1 billion menopausal women on the globe. 12.5% of the global population, so no insignificant amount of women and of the population, and there will be 47 million newly menopausal women coming into the cohort each year. In the UK, those numbers are 14 million women that are menopausal, 4.4 million in paid employment or in the workplace in its wider sense, and it's the fastest growing demographic. In Ireland, we have 570,000 women who will be classified as menopausal, 350,000 in the workplace. And with all the moves and the efforts and so on put into gender equality, diversity and inclusion, we're about trying to keep women in roles, to keep them in senior roles, leadership roles and on boards. And this is the age, menopause is when they might be kind of achieving the peak of their career. So also a fast growing dynamic. The menopausal women, who are they? Well, they're wives, partners, mothers, sisters, relatives, friends, colleagues, bosses, direct reports, line managers, peers, teammates. So it affects every woman. Every woman will go through menopause. So effectively, it's a societal issue. It's also a workplace issue. And it's also an economic issue, and I'll explain why later, because there's an impact on the workplace and employment around the number of days lost due to this. So 50% of the population will go through menopause. Not every woman will, so everyone will go through menopause, but not every woman will go through pregnancy or fertility issues or whatever. And effectively, the other 50% may be impacted. So it's all of our business to get to understand a little more about menopause and to destigmatize it. I did research last year in Ireland among 1,250 women who are in the menopausal age cohort. And what they told me was that 80% of women are unprepared for menopause. I can vouch for that. I was one of them. 66% know little or nothing about menopause. I was one of them. No periods and hot flushes is very little or almost nothing about menopause. And 79% rated the information and services for menopause in Ireland as poor or very poor. They're not very different for the UK. I did research this year to understand about menopause in the workplace in particular, and 90% of women in our survey describe themselves as having symptoms. So that's a huge cohort of women. It's somewhere between 80 and 90%. 60% describe their symptoms as moderate, and 30% describe their symptoms as severe or debilitating. So that was research among 1,150 women this year. This is something around symptoms. There are more than 40 different symptoms of menopause. Unfortunately, it doesn't begin and end with hot flushes and no periods. The symptoms are divided into, well, this is something we use in our clinic, and we give this to women in advance of a consultation for them to complete so that they can get a picture of their symptoms, the level of severity, but also the doctor at a glance can also get a picture of the symptoms that are most troublesome. So there are a lot of symptoms on the mental, emotional, psychological aspect, which include memory loss, which can affect women in work, mood swings, depression, anxiety. I'm overwhelmed myself by the level of anxiety that women talk about. Sometimes it's the first time in their lives that they've experienced these, and they often think that they're going mad. Overwhelmed, weeping, crying, grumpy, irritable, bursts of anger, panic attacks, flat mood. A lot of women describe that. They're not depressed, they just don't have the mojo that they had. And ultimately a loss in confidence. So a lot of women talk about that. On the physical symptoms, there's the hot flushes, insomnia. So many women are not sleeping. I'm gobsmacked by this as well. They can't get to sleep. They wake up at 5 a.m. or they have broken sleep throughout the night. No energy, fatigue. I describe myself as a slow puncture. Skin conditions, hair loss, hair thinning, hair growing in the wrong places, and migraines, headaches. I had never heard of perimenopause, and my GP sent me for a brain scan for my headaches. If only we'd known. Heart palpitations, weight gain. I put on about 10 kilos. Stiffness, aches and pains. I had pains in my ankles. Receding gums, yes, I had those. Dry eye. I ended up in the eye and ear 3 times with dry eye in their A&E department. Who would have thought such a little thing could cause so much pain? Brain fog, feeling like your head is full of wool. Burning mouth, tongue syndrome. That's quite uncommon, but it does happen. I had digestive problems as well, acid reflux, different things. Periods becoming irregular, more frequent, less frequent, heavier, lighter, and so on. Muscle tension. Some women think that they've got fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis. Allergies. I also developed asthma, which can be associated with perimenopause and menopause. Then there's a whole number of the genitourinary symptoms. Loss of libido, that can impact on relationships. Painful sex, the same. Vaginal dryness, vaginal discharge. Bladder issues like UTIs, urinary tract infections. Anyone who has them will know that term UTI very well. I spent all my 40s on antibiotics for that. And little did I know there's a simple pessary that has local estrogen that can help sort that. I also had kind of leaks, incontinence, they call it, urge incontinence, laugh, cough, sneeze, leak, getting up to go to the loo in the night. And those ads on TV, and sorry if you're belonging to the brand or you work for the company, but those ads that talk about it's normal, always discreet and so on, it's not normal. That is not a normal female condition. You should get that checked out. So that's enough about that in terms of the symptoms. But the key message here is please don't suffer in silence. Treatment is available. You can include diet and lifestyle. There are herbs and botanicals that can help, vitamins. HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, has had a very bad rap. The study that came out in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative, has since been debunked. The authors have come out and apologized for the study and the findings, and they believe that they've done untold damage to women over time. And it wasn't until 2015 that the NICE, the National Institute of Healthcare Excellence, brought out guidelines to say actually the modern HRT, which is delivered transdermally through the skin, through gels, patches and creams, and made to mimic exactly the female hormone, is considered the most effective treatment for most women for menopausal symptoms. Not all, but most. There are non-hormonal medical options if you can't take HRT or have had breast cancer or some other reason that you can't or don't want to, but there are other solutions available, particularly around hot flushes and mood. CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, is really excellent and it can help with menopause. Our psychologist is trained by the British Menopause Society in this. And then there's a whole area of pelvic physio, women's health physio, that can help restore pelvic strength. So don't suffer in silence, treatment is available. I did a study this year, as I said, research hot off the press this week. So just over, there was 1,150 women participated in this study, and just over 50% said that the performance was affected a little at work. Just over 30% said that the performance was affected a lot at work. Interestingly, and this is where the economic argument comes into place, 39% of these women said that they'd missed time off work due to their symptoms. 22% admitted that they've missed 3 or more days of work due to their symptoms. And 86% did not tell their employer or feel comfortable telling their employer the real reason for time off work. So there's a lot of lost time because women are not supported and because of their symptoms, and they don't feel they can discuss it. In fact, 43% have actually considered giving up work. Now, this was done post-COVID, whereas some of the UK data is done pre-COVID. 43% considered giving up work and 12% actually gave up work. The numbers in the UK are 10% have given up work. So that's a loss of women that we're trying to encourage to stay in the workplace, a loss of talent, a loss of investment in training and development, a loss of life experience. 60% lacked confidence discussing menopause with their colleagues, 70% with their line managers. A hugely high number. And when we ask women what do they want their employers to do, over 90%, in fact 95%, wanted training for managers and HR around menopause and how to have those conversations. and over 90% wanted a menopause in the workplace policy. Interestingly, this week, a study was published called the UK Fawcett Study in the UK, and it was a study of the financial services in the UK, and the report is ready to download. But I just thought I'd take this statistic for you, given that that's the sector that you're in, is that 25% of women are more likely to leave the financial services work due to menopause experience. Now, that is a shame. We really need to address this. So the business case for change is pretty compelling. I mean, we have a duty of care to employees, so safety and well-being of our employees is the right thing to do. Menopause is kind of like puberty in reverse, and that's a really good analogy in the way to think about it. So when our children are going through puberty, we wouldn't dream, particularly our girls, because they experience a surge in hormones equivalent to the decline falling off a cliff that women experience around their hormone, and particularly estrogen. And when the teenagers are going through this, when the females are going through this, they experience all sorts of issues. They experience mood, they experience, skin issues, they're changing their shape, they develop breasts, they start menstruating, they lose confidence, they're anxious, they sleep a lot, they eat a lot, etc., etc. And they literally transform before our eyes. Now, we're all prepared for puberty. We prepare our children, it's on the school curriculum. And therefore, we give them some leeway, we give them extra support, and we really, consider everything in the context of puberty. Come the other end of the scale, we're unprepared for menopause, we don't educate ourselves, and we certainly don't give ourselves any leeway, and nor do we get any leeway from anywhere on it. So performance may be impacted through things like brain fog, memory loss, lack of concentration. If you haven't slept for many nights, that can also impact your work, your anxiety, your confidence, and so on. So we really need to help support women here. I talked about talent retention, but we also need to be attracting talent. And, it's very expensive to replace good talent. So we don't want women leaving the workforce. Legislatively, there's an issue as well, because we're legislatively at risk. In the UK, they're pushing for menopause legislation for companies over 250 that they have a menopause in the workplace policy. And there's been an increasing number of tribunals taking place in the UK, employer tribunals, where they have ruled in favour of menopausal women on the grounds of gender discrimination and age discrimination. They've also ruled more recently on a case for a woman who was going through chronic symptoms for quite some time, and they ruled in favour of disability for her. Now, we don't want to have menopause considered as a disability, but it's just that, and in Ireland, the disability aspect of the legislation is even broader than the UK. So I don't want to talk about the stick approach. I prefer the carrot approach, but just to let you know that potentially that's a risk that could potentially be coming down the line. So what's best practice look like? Well, doing a survey among your staff, the way we've done it among the natural population, the Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisation, I've worked with them, I've worked with IBEC on understanding more about menopause among the nurses and midwives with INMO, and with employers as part of IBEC. Awareness training for staff, so talks like this, is critical, because it's all about making people aware and understanding and educating them about what's happening in their lives to their health. Training for managers and training for HR is really important, about having those difficult, sensitive conversations. Appointing menopause champions is another route. I know there's first aid, mental health first aiders. Well, this is appointing somebody who can champion menopause in the workplace, broker difficult conversations between management and staff, HR and staff. And then there's the whole area of reasonable adjustments. And as no two women will experience menopause in the same way, then neither will the solutions to their symptoms be the same. So reasonable adjustments include things like, access to temperature control, and as women are moving back in to the workplace from home, where maybe they were able to implement their own reasonable adjustments, maybe access to a window or aircon or a small individual desk fan, access to cold water. If there's uniforms involved, making sure the fabric is okay, making sure the number of pieces is adequate, the fit, and so on. I mean, we had a patient who was an air hostess, And she, or an air steward, and she came to us and she was saying, my God, you know, every time I have to wear that tie to get up and give the safety instructions, like, and I get a hot flush, I feel I'm going to pass out, and would love if the neckerchief could be removed or be optional in the uniform. It can be things like giving women flexibility in terms of time, start time, end time, time off to go to medical appointments, sick leave, etc., etc. So there's probably a lot of things you already have in your workplace, but you haven't looked at it through the lens of menopause. And then there's obviously the whole area of EAP, and you know, there's access to counselling services and so on. But the only thing I'd say is that, you know, menopause is very specific and maybe needs more specialist kind of input and interventions. So there's your suite of the various number of different things we in the Menopause Hub are offering, and this is part of our program to support organizations. But it just shows you the number of different options that organizations can reach to. So that's the end of what I have to say about menopause. I work in it 24/7. It's a passion. I want to advocate for women. I've spoken to the government, to the Department of Health, to ministers, really, really, really to push this forward. But what I'm challenging everybody to do today is to leave here as a menopause ambassador. You now know more about menopause, hopefully, than when you came in. You know about the implications, and therefore I'd like you to go out, start talking to family and friends about menopause so that we can start to normalize the conversation. So that's me. Lots of questions. You can email me, find me on LinkedIn, and so on. So that's me finished. What I'd like to do now is obviously stop sharing, but I'd like to hand over to John Murray. John Murray is the CEO of John Murray Headshots. So I'll hand over to you, John.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen, because I'm really bad at this whole technology thing, even though I use technology every single day. Can everybody see my screen okay? A big smiley face on it other than my own face. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I feel like a bit of a spot on a domino here today. It's definitely Women's Day, but look, I suppose it's like me giving abuse to some of my friends from Mayo every time that Mayo lose the All-Ireland to Ireland or to Dublin. Well, thanks for having me. As you'll see on my slide here, it says the bottom of the slide that substance over superficial, because I mix behavioral sciences with everything I do. So psychology, anatomy, physiology, endocrinology, which is the study of hormones, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a few other bits and pieces together with the, I suppose, the art of photography. And I do that with the intention of showing everybody that, first of all, you don't know what you look like and you're prettier than you think you are. So I'm going to share a few slides that you can kind of run through the way I do things. And I want to show this first because I got asked to talk about brand before a couple of times. And when I was talking about brand, people keep thinking that headshots are part of brand, and they're not really part of brand. I'm not going to go off on one about that. But as part of that, we had looked at this thing, and I brought this up. And Jeff Bezos had said that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And I precursored that with, it's what they remember. So they have to remember something in order to say something. But it's not just about what they're saying, it's about what we're saying about ourselves as well after the fact, you know, because vision by its very nature is external. So when we look around us, we are very quick to judge ourselves based on what we see around us. I meant to do this at the very start and I forgot, but I'm going to do it right now because we're 2 slides in. If you think of the last person that you spoke to today before you came on this call, I like to do this in front of a whole room full of people where we can say it to each other. But if you talk about the person who's beside you or the last person that you spoke to, clearly everybody's on mute, but say something nice about that person. Tell them something or think of something that you like about that person. It can be about anybody that you see on the call as well today. Just something nice about them. Tell them something you like. You like their hair, you like their clothes, you like something about them. It's very easy. It's very easy to turn around and tell somebody else you like something about them. Now do it about yourself. Tell them something you like about you. The absolute panic. What am I going to say about myself? So it's very easy for us, again, measuring ourselves against everybody else to say, oh, she's prettier than me, he's prettier than me, he's more successful than me. And we measure against what's external. So it's not only what we say about others, it's what they say about us. It's what we remember and say about ourselves, because we can't say anything about ourselves unless we remember something in the first place. Which brings me to my point that we don't even know what we look like. So what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is try to prove that point, and not only prove it from a physical point of view, but also from a societal point of view as well. See, this is a beach ball, very clearly. Now, if I was to cover all sections of that beach ball except the red one and show it to you and say, what color is it? If you said it was red, you wouldn't be wrong, because based on the evidence, it's red. If I covered all of the sections of the beach ball again, except the purple side, and showed it to somebody else and said, what color is that beach ball? And they said it's purple, would they be wrong? No, because based on the evidence, the ball is purple. So when we're looking at ourselves and we're looking at what we see, we can only go on the evidence that we already have. So we have this gap between how we see ourselves and what we think the rest of the world sees. And we have a gap between who we believe we are as opposed to who we believe the rest of the world expects us to be. Now, for some people, that gap is tiny, and for some, the gap is astronomical. It's huge. And we need to examine that, and we need to understand, first of all, that it's there, and then we need to figure out the cause and effect, what it actually does and how it affects us. Now, it'd be very easy for me to dive straight into the physical self-image thing. I'm a photographer. I take photographs of people's faces for a living. It'd be hugely, hugely easy for me to just dive straight into the sense of physical self. But I'm going to talk about societal self-image first, because I think that's important as well. It's hugely important. If you grow up in Dalkey or Killiney or Portmarnock or Malahide or one of those kind of communities, and everybody you know, it doesn't really matter where in Dublin it is or if it's where in the world it is. If you grow up and your parents are academics, or they have been academics, they've been through college, they're working in professional careers, chances are you're going to follow into that route. So doctors, solicitors, accountants. It's very easy because the path is already laid to follow into that career path, or to follow down that line. It may not be the exact same career path, but chances are, if they all went to college, that you'll go to college. If you grew up in Finglas or in Ballymun or in Pearse Street in the city centre, up the road from Chartered Accountants, and everybody you know are either taxi drivers, they're on social benefits, they're builders, they work in manual labour jobs, chances are you're going to follow into that route because it's the route that's laid out for us. You know, it's monkey see, monkey do is a very easy thing to say, but it is monkey see, monkey do. It's the path that is already laid for us. And we believe we need to follow into those positions. Now, if you're from Dalkey and you want to be a gangster rapper and rap about how much your parents loved you, then that's the thing you should be doing. You know, you shouldn't be, I don't know, you shouldn't follow into some career that's not going to fulfill you because it's not what you want to do. And it's the same if you're from Pearse Street and you want to be a professional cellist. Well, then you shouldn't be afraid of the fact that you might be ridiculed. Now, I grew up in Pearse Street, just around the corner from Chartered Accountants. Lads that I went to school with and lads that I hung around with as a child and as a teenager, some of them live between pubs and bookies, and some of them are taxi drivers, and some of them work on building sites. My family, we don't really fit into the characteristics of general Pearse Street because creativity was championed and questioning things was championed when we were growing up. You know, our parents championed that sort of stuff. My brother's a barrister. He has friends who stand in front of judges for very different reasons, but he is a barrister. And I mix behavioral sciences and photography and work with Google and LinkedIn and Facebook and Hertz and eBay and Northern Trust and Chartered Accountants and everybody else. And my sister is training as a digital animator because she wanted to, and because that's the sort of thing that's going to fulfill her. So this whole thing of comparison is the thief of joy is a very famous quote from Teddy Roosevelt. And it's very true. It's not just in the physical sense. It's very much in the life sense. So, you know, I was doing a talk for the Mental Health and Wellbeing Summit. And coming up to it, I thought of this. I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and this was in my head. Your story should be something that you're telling on reflection and not something that's told to you before it even happens. You know, we live in a world where we now step out of our own circle and into the circles of everybody else because we feel we need to match. We need to do what they're doing. We need to not be ostracized for standing outside and doing something a little bit different. And it's one of those things that's going to make us feel really, really uncomfortable. Again, it brings us back to this gap between how we believe or who we believe we are as opposed to who we believe the rest of the world expects us to be. Again, vision is external by its very, very nature. We see what's going on around us. We see what people are doing around us, and we match that because we don't want to step away from the flock because we could be attacked or ridiculed, because that's what survival is. So we try and use our survival instincts to protect ourselves, but all we're doing is minimizing ourselves. And this gap, again, is this relationship between how we see ourselves and what we think the rest of the world sees. The concept of you don't know what you look like. This is going to be a little bit mind-bending, but you don't know what you look like. The University of Ohio in the States did a study in 2017, and they figured out that we have 16,384 different musculature variations in our faces. That's a lot. We have 17 different smiles that we do every single day. And not only that, the whole concept of technology versus nature teaches us that we don't know what we look like in the first place. Cameras were only invented 200 years ago, but we've had eyeballs for 90 million years. And for 90 million years, we've stood in front of other squishy things like ourselves and connected with them on a visual basis. So when you meet somebody on the street, you look at the shape of their shoulders, the position their head is in, and then you look at their eyebrows, their lower eyelids, and the corners of their mouth as a unit shape, because you're processing 2 million bits of information every minute. And it's very difficult for us to not disregard a lot of that information. It's irrelevant. I know Patricia was in here for headshots and one or two others that are on the call today. And I explained that around the corner is Grafton Street. You walk up Grafton Street pre-COVID, you could have passed 40,000 people on a busy Saturday and won't pay attention to any of them. If you walk past a drunk or a drug addict on Grafton Street at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they're the only person you're going to see because their shape is different and how they move is different, even though your brain has scanned every single person you passed. Now, when we think about the relationship that we have to physical image, as in seeing ourselves or seeing others, we've done that Grafton Street thing for 90 million years. That part of your brain is 90 million years ago. Your eyeballs are 90 million years old. The camera was invented 200 years ago. And the glass-based mirror was only invented 180 years ago, 20 years after the mirror, or after the camera. So technology versus nature, you know, the technology that's going on inside of our heads and the technology that we have available to us externally are completely different. You know, what they do and their relationship to each other it's crap, to be honest. So you don't know what you look like. Now, I want to talk about technology as well. So when you see yourself in the mirror, you think you look like that, but you don't. You're back to front. You're the only person in the whole world who sees it. So when you see a photograph of yourself, it's the wrong way around, and your brain tries to figure out why you don't look like you. Now you pick one thing on your face you don't like. It's the same thing in every photograph. It's always there, and you blame that on making you feel uncomfortable. And it's not that at all. I'm going to explain it. But we need to understand as well that when we look at a photograph, we need to understand that the camera is doing very, very different things. This camera will stay in the same position it's in now, and two different photographs are taken at two different focal lengths on two different lenses. So the first one on the left is 24mm wide, which is kind of what the camera on your laptop sees, or the selfie camera on your phone. So it's quite wide. You can see there's a huge amount of information top to bottom, whereas the camera was in the exact same position for the second one, and that sees what the human eye sees because, well, it sees the same zoom level as the human eye. If I go to the next slide, this is that first image cropped to show the differences. Now, I look a lot heavier in the second image. My face is a lot wider. My ears come forward a lot more. Whereas this lens here, you can see more of my jawline, and it's really driving my face forward. Now, they're the same camera in the same position, just that the focal length of the lens is different. So already there's a problem with the technology because the technology changes where the human eye doesn't. Now we see three-dimensionally as well, and the camera only sees two-dimensionally. That's why everybody looks like a human tone with eyeballs, and we've all got loads of chins. So the evidence that we see is wrong. This whole thing of false evidence appearing real. I heard a very aggressive little sales manager for a company talking to his staff on one of these Zoom calls before. And he said, false evidence appearing real, you know, that's all fear is. And I was like, it's not. It's a visceral response designed to stop us from falling off cliffs or coming home having to explain to your mother why you're missing an arm. It's something that's been there for millions and millions of years. It's a very thing that protects our life. And it was only afterwards when I was explaining it here to somebody in the studio that the evidence that she sees is wrong. Then I thought, oh, your mum was right. False evidence appearing real. You know, what we see is wrong. What we see in the mirror is wrong. What we see on camera is wrong. So how do we correct that? Now, in 2014, I trained with the top headshot photographer in the world, a guy named Peter Hurley. And before I trained with him, I had a conversation with him. And I said, do you ever get people just send you back images, or they stand there and say, but it doesn't look like me? So you just flip it horizontally so it looks like what they see in the mirror, and then give it back to them. And they, oh, that's much better. I thought, do you know what? Do you ever do that? And he said, never, ever do that. Educate them. And then he showed me this picture and he said, what do you think of this girl? She's beautiful. Her name is Umpele Kilagobe, and she was in Peter's studio. And he took a photograph just before this one. And she came out from behind the camera and had a look at the screen, and she shouted across at her husband on the couch and said, honey, I hate my face. And the husband just kind of shrugged his shoulders, laughed, and went back to reading his newspaper because he'd heard it all before. She was Miss Universe when that photograph was taken. This is Gary Talbot, and Gary was in the studio here. He's from Ballyfermot, and he was discovered on Grafton Street by Tyson Beckford, the international supermodel, who said to him, Gary, are you a model? He said, no. He said, do you want to be? He said, okay. And a few weeks later, he was earning anywhere up to 15,000 euros a week, walking up and down runways in Milan, in Rome, in Paris, in London, in New York. And when he stood in front of the camera, he said, I hate my face. And I laughed at him and I said, Gary, I take a hammer to my face to look like you. And he kind of sniggered and smiled and worked it off. But he said, no, I had Bell's palsy when I was 12 and I still see a deficit on one side of my face. We can all see the deficit, yeah, because it doesn't exist, right? What Gary was actually doing was social smiling, but he was doing what's called a dominant smile, which is the Joey, our friend smile, when we smile on one side of our face. But he said, I have moles on the left side of my face here, and I really like them. They add character to my face. So if Gary Talbot and Miss Universe have issues with how they see themselves, you know, what chance do the rest of us have? At the moment, there is about 10,000 Google searches every month. On Facebook, there is 8,500 people asking Facebook the same question every day. And there's 9.34 million YouTube videos of people asking the same question. And it's, am I ugly? There's the search bar. 9.34 million YouTube results. This video is of a little girl. It's 23 seconds long and she can't be more than 10. And she says, people tell me I'm ugly all the time. I just want the God honest truth. Am I an ugly girl, or am I an average girl, or am I a pretty girl? And I need to tell you that because of trolling, some of the comments are horrific. Now, what she doesn't understand is the same effect is happening here from her laptop camera that was happening to me in that photograph at the start, where it was 24 millimeters wide and it was really, really stretched out. So the closer she gets, the longer her face looks. Her ears disappear off the side of her face and her face looks really, really narrow. And it makes her forehead look a lot larger than it actually is. It's called fisheye. Now, that's not what anybody else in the rest of the world sees. I did this talk for PA the House and for a few others, and I showed this image on the screen, and I've done it plenty of times. My headshot was as big as the wall. And I say, am I ugly? Because I've got a heavy eyelid on the left side. I have a bump on the side of my nose. My nose is a little bit crooked because I broke it lots of times as a kid. My ears are really big. One's lower than the other. And I have a chunk missing off the side of this ear here that my wife was staring at the screen looking at. And I pointed at her and I said, look at her looking. She sleeps on that side of the bed and she's never seen it. She didn't talk to me for a couple of days, but look, I made my point. But the only thing that I ever saw in photographs is this side of my mouth hung down very slightly. And it hung down very slightly because I was doing the same thing Gary Talbot was doing in that other image, or before that other image. I was looking at myself smiling on one side of my face because I was doing a dominant smile. I was squeezing this eye. So if anybody thinks that they have an eye difference in photographs, it's because you're squeezing one side of your face on purpose. You're also doing it with your mouth as well. So that thing on your face that makes you feel uncomfortable, that you blame on making you feel uncomfortable, is exactly the same as the Toblerone bear. There's a bear in this Toblerone logo. Just because we're going to be short of time, I'm going to show you where it is. This is the bear here. There's his ear. There's his nose and his mouth. This is the actual bear here. And just to ruin your trips through the airport in future, if you look really closely, this, which is supposed to be his leg, we're going to assume he's male. And the fish is doing something really inappropriate by biting him in a certain place that's just very uncomfortable. Enjoy explaining that one to people in the airport, people. Now, there's the FedEx arrow as well. So there's an arrow on the FedEx logo here between the E and the X. But once you see these things, you can't unsee them. So every time you go through the airport and pick up the Toblerone, the first thing you're going to look for is the bear and then the fish. And then if you see a FedEx van approaching, you know, delivering your Amazon or whatever else, you're going to be looking straight over at the side of the van to make sure that the arrow is still there. And that's the same as that thing in your face. You look at it to try and make sure that it's there, that you're not gone mad. This slide doesn't really need to be there, but this just describes a survey that was done worldwide that shows that 60% of people in the world had said that they refused to do something on a day that they didn't feel good enough about their self-image. That can be anything from answering the door. 30% of people had said that they'd withdrawn from classroom debate or from contribution around a round table in an office because they didn't want to draw attention to how they looked on that day. And 20% of people hadn't turned up at all on days they didn't feel happy and confident and comfortable in how they looked. And that's the things like interviews and going to first dates and weddings, things that can potentially change your life. Now, they obviously turn up to their own wedding. That would be a bit tragic. I like to use this again because I like to ask what this is. Now, I know we're all on Zoom, stupid COVID, but everybody says this is a beach ball, but it's not a beach ball. It's a two-dimensional graphic of a beach ball. But based on the shape of that, we understand what it's for. The same as when we look at the shape of the shoulders of a human. We look and we understand the shapes of a human. So there's a phenomenon called Paradolia that comes from this part of the brain down here. So the bit that looks like a walnut, if you were to sit it on a table, that little piece there that touches the table first, is called the fusiform gyrus. And it's responsible for us understanding these series of shapes. These aren't faces. All they are is circles that have other shapes in them that represent the things that we do with our faces when we display certain emotions. So this is all down to empathy. Empathy makes us feel what other people feel. If they're happy, we're happy with them. If they're sad, we're sad with them. If they're uncomfortable, we're uncomfortable with them. So when we see photographs and images like this, we look at the first one and we feel happy because this guy is smiling. So empathy tells us to copy what we see. This is this phenomenon called Paradolia, where we see faces and things that don't have faces. Now, what we're looking at here is the shapes. His lower eyelids are flat and the corners of his mouth inflect upwards. So that not only tells us that it's a smiley face or a face, it tells us that it's a gleeful face and we feel the exact same way because what we do is we mirror what we see. So mirror receptors in your brain tell you to copy exactly what you see. Whether you're standing in front of a person or looking at this image, you squeeze your lower eyelids, the corners of your mouth inflect upwards, and you release endorphins into your bloodstream. This guy is doing that Joey smile that I was talking about Gary doing, and I used to do in photographs where you smile on one side of your face and say, how are you doing? And this guy over here, somebody has used him to clean up sick in the toilets, and that's why his eyebrows inflect downwards, his lower eyelids are curved, and his mouth is nice and little narrow. That's why he looks angry. Now, I know I'm about to run over time and I still have loads of stuff to talk about, but look, this is in the chat. Am I okay to run a little bit? Anybody? It's okay. I'll leave the chat in the bottom corner and I'll keep an eye on if I'm okay. These things are exactly the same and you might think I'm going crazy. Thanks, Steve. Well, look, on the left is Giselle Bundchen. Now, when you look at the left and you look at the right image, you think, what is he talking about? Something had to happen to Peter Parker for Peter Parker to turn into Spider-Man. He was generally quite uncool before he got bitten by a spider. The same as this image here. Photo studios are notoriously cold. So you walk into a photo studio and I guarantee she had corned beef skin, this mottled effect all over her skin with, what do you call them? The goosebumps. Goose pimples. So when this image was taken, there's probably 20 people involved in this image, from stylists, hairstylists, makeup artists, the photographer. And then once the image is taken, it's sent to a retouching house. So you have a team of retouchers working on this photograph, slimming down her jawline, making sure that everything looks perfect. Somebody does her hair as a retoucher, computer graphic retoucher. Then somebody else does her skin and somebody else does the clothes, and then it goes to an editor. So something has to happen for these things to turn into the way they are. Now, which is terrible, but when you look at this whole concept of comparison is the thief of joy, we measure ourselves against what we see. Here's a little video. When this is on advertising, because I think we need to understand what adverts do. It's only 20 seconds long, but what are they actually selling us, right? Just the concept of what they're selling us.
At over 300 stores around Ireland, Londis, official sponsor of the Irish Olympic team.
I'll try that again. What they're actually selling us is not hair gel or using Londis or any of that other stuff. They're selling us two things there. They're selling us happiness and sex. Right? That's all they're selling us. That's all every advert in the whole world sells us. The concept of what we want. You go and you see a car advert on TV and you look at it and go, okay, Volkswagen, and there's this woman is piling her 15 kids into the back of a people carrier and it looks great and all the kids love the car and it's great. If you've got kids and you try to bury them into a car to get anywhere, you know that it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. They're killing each other. They're pulling each other's hair. You know, it's not working out the way it does in the ads. The same as these ads here, all they're trying to do is sell us things that we fundamentally require. You know, we're here for procreation. You know, so one of the things that we want is to procreate. How do you do that? By meeting people. You know, we want to be happy. We're constantly sold the concept of being happy. Now, when we look at this waveform here, this is the same as basically any advert or any TV program that we see. It's a really bad graphic, but I don't really care. But it represents one thing, and it's Facebook. You go onto Facebook first thing in the morning and everybody friends with everybody and everybody's celebrating everybody, you know, and they're at a high. And then by lunchtime, somebody's either sleeping with somebody else's sister and there's murder and everybody's killing each other and we're in a dip. So it's sensationalism. What's this? This is clearly Instagram or TikTok, where they only share the very best of what's going on in their life, right? And here's your life. Great. Get up in the morning and you do all the exact same things you do every single day, and you don't celebrate any of the things that we do because it's just the same thing. You get up, you travel to work in the same way, you work in the same job, you speak to the same people, kids do the same things, you help them with their homework. All the same things happen every single day because this is the gray space that we identify with self. But we don't realize that we're superheroes. Clark Kent is completely different, and I can't remember her name now for the life of me. It will come into my head. That what's happening here is that these people were born as Wonder Woman, and he was born as Superman. That's their representation of what they are. Is they are actually Superman and Wonder Woman. But then they go and they put on regular clothes like we do, and we make ourselves smaller the same way they do to try and blend in, to try not to be ostracized or picked on, to try and just be the same as everybody else. But we don't realize the superpowers that we have. Any parents on here, you made a human. And not only do you make a human, you go and you teach them to do all the things that are important within their lives, you know, to be kind and caring, to speak. You're not an English language teacher, but you do teach them to speak. You know, you feed them, you do all the things, and you teach them to do all the things that will make them successful humans. And we don't see any of the superpowers that we have. Look, you want to know why you look deranged in photographs? It's because of this, because you're holding your eyes open and your mouth is narrow and flat, and you go, the sister-in-law smile. And then you wonder why you feel uncomfortable in photographs. This is Jonathan. This is just one or two quick, very, very quick demonstrations. I know I like to talk about people don't know what they look like. He's a surgeon in Beaumont Hospital, a neurosurgeon. I said to him, do whatever you think you should do. He did this. That's not what he looks like. That is. This is Tulio, and he's on the cover of my website. Questionable clothing choice. I said to him, do whatever you think you should do. He's a model. He should have known better. And he did this. It's not what he looks like. That is. This is Ashina, exact same. You know, the first one, she looks uncomfortable. The second one, she's squeezing her lower eyelids, so we see confidence. Here, we see a big, genuine, reactive smile on her face. That's what she looks like. This is Anne, and Anne is an international wedding planner, and she's a life coach. And she came into the studio and said, I have a big, roundy face. And I said, okay. No, you don't, but okay. And she stood in front of the camera, and she was really uncomfortable. She backed away and held her eyes open, and she made her mouth really, really narrow and small. That's not what she looks like. That is definitely not what she looks like. That is. You know, all of these people did the exact same thing. They all felt uncomfortable. So they look uncomfortable. If you feel great, you look great. If you feel uncomfortable, you look uncomfortable. So this I attributed to Bo Bennett until I was told it wasn't Bo Bennett by Bo Bennett. Beauty is nothing more than self-confidence applied to the face. And how you walk in your own skin, how you walk in the skin you wear is your decision. Why not embrace it? Because what are the choice do you have? I will be taking answers or questions later. But I'm going to pass directly over to the lovely Patricia Byron. Sorry, I ran over a little bit or a lot because I tend to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing and pass across to the lovely Patricia, who has a great headshot, and she can continue on. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, John. And I do have a lovely headshot because yeah, it was carried out by the lovely John Murray. But there we go. I'll tell you that story later. So thanks very much, Dee, Karen and Chartered Accountants Ireland. I'm really excited about this webinar. I'm excited to hear from Loretta and from John. And if there's proof needed that the universe gives us nudges, well, then me being here today with both John and Loretta is that. But that's a story for later. I'll tell you that later. So who are we? Who am I? So basically, my background was financial services. And a bit like Dee said, I left Ireland during the 80s because I couldn't go to college. I didn't know at the time that one of the reasons why I held a self-limiting belief that I was thick was because I'd actually got dyslexia. So I went to the UK and I made my fortune in the UK, as they say, and then I came back to Ireland. I got involved in training and development, and looking back on my career, I realized that all through my early career, I was the sole woman in a sea of red braces and pinstripe suits. I found myself having to work harder and work faster, demand a lot more of myself just to compete in this world of men, which it was. During the 80s and 90s here in Ireland, you know, anybody in middle to senior management, it was purely dominated by men. Now, we moved on from there, thank God, but it's still the way it is. So what I'm here to do today is just give you a little brief chat about being your authentic self. And Loretta's talked about being your authentic self insofar as she's talking about menopause and speaking up. And John's talked about being your authentic self and through loving yourself and loving the person that you are. And there's the photograph that John took of me, slightly different, but you know, he got the best out of me that day. So we talk about being yourself. And I'm just wondering, would you put into the chat, what do you actually think it means to be authentic? If people could actually just pop into the chat, what you think it means to be authentic? What does being authentic mean to you? Oscar Wilde, yeah, being true to yourself and your beliefs, being genuine. Lovely, Elaine, thanks. Not being afraid to express yourself, following your own path. Brilliant. Having no fear, being comfortable in your own skin. Yeah. Oscar Wilde says, be yourself because everybody else is taken. And yet what we've discovered over the years is that, especially women, we have a tendency to hide our authentic self because we have a fear that we don't look professional, or we're not in control, or we won't give off the right image. And culturally, we have been educated to limitations. John has mentioned that already. We have been educated to limitations. You know, when we're younger, we're told, you know, that's a man's job, or be a good girl, be quiet and you'll get noticed, or be nice and you'll get noticed. Draw within the lines, stay within the lines. And one of the things that I'm going to ask you today is to step out of those limitations. So that's an Oscar Wilde quote. I'm going to give you one of my quotes, if I can move my slide on here. The things that make you different make you. As I mentioned already, when I was at school, I was undiagnosed dyslexia. So for me, I didn't realize why I didn't like being around people. I thought I wasn't very intelligent. I couldn't keep up with other people in the class. Then when I left school, I got my first job in London. And funny enough, I got put onto a management development program. Why? The reason I got put onto a management development program in the bank that I worked with was because I was leaving Ireland. I was letting go of the shackles. That's one of the reasons. I let go of the shackles and I just said, I'm just going to be myself. And I don't care what these people think, because if they don't like me, I can come home. So I had that safety net back then. And as it happened, they liked what they saw and they put me on a management development program. So I progressed quite quickly in the financial services industry. And one of my first big jobs was on the funds desk, where we were transferring money back and forth. And one of the things that happened to me was that I was trained by another woman who was a powerhouse. She was absolutely brilliant, and she was a powerhouse at her job. And she worked on this funds desk, and it was really, really, really intense. And she had to get money transferred from one company to another company and so on. And I sat with her for 3 weeks and I took all my notes and I looked up to her and I thought, oh, if only I could be like her. And the first day, knowing I was dyslexic, and knew I was a little bit uncomfortable about the job, because I'm not only verbally dyslexic, I'm also numerically dyslexic. Hey ho, I was going to give it a shot. I did a Lehman's on it. Yeah, instead of transferring 1.9 billion, I transferred 91 billion. Wow, I nearly brought down the banking system. So you can imagine that I was taken off that job very, very quickly. I never told anybody the fact that I'm numerically dyslexic. So, you know, that was just me. But it kind of fed into this, oh, I'm not really good enough. Do you know, I'm really not good enough at what I do. And as I moved through my career, I actually got to see the bigger picture, because I started to understand what being myself was. And I started to understand that dyslexia was a gift rather than a hindrance. I have phenomenal memory. I think outside the box. I can be quite creative, as you know, anybody who knows people who are dyslexic, I suppose they're what they lack in getting the spellings right and getting their numbers right, they certainly make up for it in other areas. I still have a legacy issue. I hate getting things wrong, because it automatically brings me back to my childhood, when I was scolded for not writing correctly, or I was scolded for my bad spellings, and nobody ever picked up on that. As Loretta said at the beginning, in menopause, nobody ever told us that this happens and you go through it and it's always there. We think we go in and we come out again. I thought once I get out of school, the dyslexia won't be a problem for me. So you all know how to be authentic, or you all know from what I'm seeing in the chat here, you've all got an understanding of what being authentic means. What today is about is just giving yourself permission to show it. What I'm hoping to do for you today is just give you a little framework to get you thinking about, how am I showing up every single day? And, you know, maybe I need to step out of my comfort zone a little bit. Certainly when I stepped out of my comfort zone, when I went through my middle career and I was climbing the ladder and I had to go out and network, I wouldn't network with people because they'd all arrive with their badges, but I'd be afraid because I couldn't read their name. So I just wouldn't go. Little things like I'd be embarrassed to stand up in public and speak in case I got it wrong. And then I decided to move away from the financial services industry. Yes, numerically, I get the joke, the numerically dyslexic woman in the financial services industry, but I decided to move out of the financial services industry into training and development. And over the years, I've spent a lot of time working as an executive coach. I've done a lot of work on my own self-awareness and understanding myself, my own self-development. And now, as you guys have said, I'm just comfortable in my own skin, but it took a long time to get there, and it hasn't been without its challenges. So what I'm hoping today is just to give you a framework that's going to help you rediscover, reignite, or just develop your authentic self. I don't know what women we have in the group here, and I've seen there's a couple of men in the group as well. It's regardless of whether you're a woman or you're a man, it's around knowing it, showing it, and growing it. So what I would like to do is to get you to think about knowing it. What does that mean? Are you just getting on or getting by, or what are you doing at the moment? So know it, show it, grow it. The first thing we do is we just kind of understand who we are. And that's around just being true to yourself. So if you're somebody who is in menopause, or you're who's entered into menopause, or you're somebody who's dyslexic, or maybe you're going through a tough time at the moment, maybe you've got fertility issues, or you are you've stepped into a leadership role and you're struggling to move from being one of the gals to, now having to tell your team what to do, or whatever it is. It's about understanding who you are. So it's about raising your self-awareness as to who you are. What are your values? What are your beliefs? And I'll tell you, the one thing that helps you understand your values is we will understand what values we hold dear when somebody steps on them. So the minute somebody steps on one of our values, it kind of gets us. And sometimes we go, yeah, that's grand, and we just let it go. But understanding your beliefs, understanding your value system, understanding what's got you here may not get you to the next step. They're the important things. So what do you value at the moment, and how is that serving you? The other thing is to show it. So we should all be stretching. We should all be stepping out of our comfort zone. New ways of thinking. If you're doing something in a particular way and it just doesn't sit with you, but you're doing it that way because that's the way you're supposed to do, that's the way society tells you you're supposed to do it, take a stand back. Look at new ways of thinking. Be sincere about who you are. My name is Patricia Byron. I'm a dyslexic. Don't worry about who you are. You are yourself, and understand what it is that makes you who you are. I'm Patricia Byron. I went through menopause, nearly killed me until I realized what it was. So know it, show it, and then grow it. We are what we repeatedly do. So start to understand what your values are, what your beliefs are, how they're serving you. Consider then how you can show up like that at all times, and then keep doing it. We are what we repeatedly do. And I think it's Socrates that says, we are what we repeatedly do, so therefore excellence is not an act, but a habit. And nobody is asking you to act in a particular way. It's about recognizing who you are, find your voice, and speak the voice. Okay. It's funny, when we talk about, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but when we talk about know it, okay, what does that mean? How do we know who we really are? And sometimes, as I said, sometimes it's when somebody steps in our values, we recognize that we're holding that value dear. So maybe do a values check with yourself. Get a list of values like honesty, sincerity, punctuality, whatever it is you hold dear, and do a little value audit on yourself. Write out your first three, write out 5 values that you hold dear. And then say to yourself, now, what if I had to give up 3 of them? Which ones would I give up? And I am now left with 2 values that I can only hold dear. And of those 2 values, if I was to give up one of them, which would I hold on to? Another way to understand a little bit more about yourself is to understand what irritates you. Because very often the things that irritate us about other people can lead us to an insight about ourselves. So for example, I value, without being too rigid, but I do value being on time. And I lecture, and it really irritates me when people turn up late. It just, kind of, oh God, please, and so I have to temper that with being emotionally intelligent and go, well, hang on here a minute. I don't know what's going on in their life. So my authentic self is to go, ooh. But then we have to temper that. So it's tempering the authenticity of being who you actually are, but also being aware of who you actually are and the impact that that has on other people. So maybe you need to be aware of your belief system, your values, the impact that it has, and then don't be too rigid and look at it from somebody else's perspective and get them to understand it from yours. So that's kind of the know it. It's around, sorry, I'm just moving my slide on here. It's also about knowing your story. What's your story and how does it affect you? So is your story, I've worked really, really hard to get to the position that I'm in. So what is your story and how does it affect you? How does it help you show up? Also know your beliefs, your emotions, your patterns of behavior and your values. And then finally, as I said, be true to yourself, but which self? If you're like me and sometimes can get irritated, just be aware, okay, that's my authentic self coming out. That's me. That's because it's a value that I hold dear, but what impact is that having? So sometimes we have to be a little bit flexible. That's the authenticity paradox. That's the whole paradox about being authentic. So the old saying, fake it till you make it. Amy Cuddy says, fake it till you become it. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about showing it. So when we need to show our authenticity, sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone to do it. Sometimes we have to say things like, I'm dyslexic. I'm sorry, can I just take a break here now? I'm in the middle of menopause. I've got a bit of brain fog. I need to leave the room. Other ways that we can show it is to kind of step into our presence. I champion women in the workplace. Why? Because I've been there. I've been that person that's worked harder and put myself under so much stress because I wanted to be like that man that was my manager that I've stepped into his role, or I wanted to be like this, or I thought as a banker I had to behave in a particular way. And as I went through my career, I thought, no, I learned how to step into my presence, how to be the type of person that I am today. And one of the things that I've seen, especially in the women that I support in the workplace, is they can have a tendency to devalue their opinions. So I often see women in the workplace saying things like, sorry, can I just check in there? Or sorry to disturb you. Or could I just, could you just come back to me on that email, right? Start looking at that and say to yourself, well, what would the authentic me say? The authentic me would say, I sent you an email last week. Can you come back on me? I really need it for this project, or I really need it for this issue. So start stepping out of your comfort zone. Stop devaluing your thoughts and your opinions. Stop sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, how is this going to sound? If I send this email, what is it going to sound like? I'll just leave it here for a minute, or or maybe if I tell the whole backstory to it, and we end up tying ourselves up in knots over how it will sound to other people. Why? Because we've been educated to those limitations culturally and societally. Oh, there's my dyslexia again, I better put my teeth in, but societally, we have been educated to those limits. So start thinking about stepping into your presence. Be the authentic person that you want to be and create new ways of thinking and doing. So know it, show it, and then the final one is around growing it. So how do I grow my authenticity? How do I become that person? And don't get me wrong, there's days when I stand up and I think, oh, I can't do this. I just can't continue to show up. I just rather just, I'll hide behind a mask or whatever the case may be. But then I'm not being true to myself. So the question I ask you is, are you being true to yourself? Are you being the authentic person that you need to be? You all know how to be it. It's just giving yourself the permission to do it. So grow it. So one of the ways that you can grow your authenticity is to experiment with it. So that's around self-management. So it's understanding who your authentic self is. And you can find that out, as I said, by doing some values exercises, looking at your self-beliefs, looking at where you've come from and what made you the person that you are, looking at the things that maybe irritate you about other people, because they'll tell you a lot about yourself, okay? And experiment with it and find your voice, speak your voice. Don't devalue the person that you are. Don't devalue your language. And if you fail, well, fail again and fail harder. Be a reflective listener. So if people don't like the new you, or should I say the real you, well, challenge the thinking. And if you do get negative feedback on it, well, think of it as a learning opportunity. Yeah, great. This is helping me discover a little bit more about myself. And then finally, always be sharpening the saw. So the late, great Stephen Covey says that there are 7 habits that we should all adopt to be an effective leader or an effective manager or just an effective person. And of the 7, sharpening the saw is the last one. And it's a really interesting one because he talks about just always be learning, whether it's learning about what's going on around you or it's learning about yourself. You should always be sharpening the saw. So keep developing, keep learning. So that's a framework for authenticity. Not bad for somebody who's dyslexic, not bad for somebody who struggles with public speaking. Yeah, and what I've done over the years is the old Susan, I think her name is Susan Jeffers, I've kind of said, look, feel the fear and do it anyway. And one of the things that stepping out of my comfort zone, going somewhere where nobody knew me, actually did was it empowered me to say, what's the worst that can happen? I can just go back and step into my comfort zone. Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Always be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of somebody else. And I love the movie The Wizard of Oz. Why? Because Dorothy got caught up in a storm and she got landed in Oz and she had to walk her own yellow brick road. And along the way, she had the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. And she brought them to the Emerald City. She led them to the Emerald City to see the wizard. And at the end of the day, the wizard was just a charlatan. And she always said, I have the power, my dear. She was told by the good witch, you always had the power, my dear. You just had to find it for yourself. So I love that movie, going back to the 1950s. And it's just a fantastic movie that shows that once we identify what our inner power is, and John talked about it earlier, once we identify what our inner power is and show it, it's amazing the changes that can happen. I told you that the universe often gives us stuff and nudges, and that we sometimes we ignore them. And just an interesting story for you all was that I didn't know, I knew I was coming along today to speak at this event, and I really appreciate the invitation from Dee and from Karen. But what I didn't realize that I was sharing with John and with Loretta, and back in December 2019, I suddenly lost myself. I didn't know who I was. I was looking back going, where's my confidence gone? Where is that woman that was there? It's just gone, it's disappeared. And eventually, by sharpening the saw and doing a bit of research, I suddenly discovered, I've entered menopause. So I went along to Loretta's Menopause Hub and very quickly got my mojo back, very quickly. So the Menopause Hub put the smile back on my face. And then John captured it in a photograph. So that's the real me, that's the authentic self. I love that photograph because, you know, I could have said, you know what, wrinkles, getting old, whatever. But I actually remember the feeling I had when that photograph was taken. And I said, yeah, this is me, this is my authentic self. So, yeah, the universe sometimes keeps giving us nudges, and it was really strange when I realized that I was going to be here talking with both John and Loretta. So think about the framework, know it, show it, grow it. What I'd also like to offer out to you, if you have your phone there, just point it at the camera right now. And this is only for the women. Sorry if there's any men in the room, but this is only for the women. This is a Women in Leadership program that I run, and it's a taster program. It's a free event. And if you want to rock up on the day, just register with Eventbrite. So don't wait for your ship to come in, swim out and meet it. And Dee, I'm going to pass back over to you now. And
wow, I'm just back to reality. That was just all so fantastic. Karen, I'm going to hand straight over to you because we're running out of time, but it'd be lovely to hear about the career supports that are available at the Institute. So Karen, if you want to take it away, thanks a million.
No problem at all. And thanks so much to our speakers. As Dee said, that was absolutely fantastic. So I suppose I was really struck by what Patricia was saying in terms of us finding our authentic self. And that is a lot of what we do as part of the career development and recruitment service when we meet with members on a one-to-one basis for career coaching and advice. And we help to set members on their authentic career path. What we also do then is work with them in terms of finding the right role, so the actual recruitment part of that. But then we have a whole range of other career supports which are particularly relevant, I feel in terms of helping you to bring your career to the next stage. So we have the career pathway tool, which is all about helping you to get a better sense of the skills that you have, how you can play to those strengths, and also to coin a phrase that Patricia used as well, which is about sharpening the saw. So looking at where it is you need to sharpen the saw. Another one of our popular programs is our career mentor program, and we've specifically I suppose looked at this through a diversity and inclusion lens, in that we have an equal number of female members or mentors to male mentors as well, and we find that our female members in particular get huge value from this in terms of meeting with other members who are at a more advanced career stage, and somebody who can be that role model for them, to give them and share with them their or insights and guidance as such. So really invaluable, and can be a real confidence booster as well, and also can be a really great source of feedback as well. So definitely something for you to consider. We also have a whole host of career webinars, which are both on our website, and then we've continuous webinars coming up, and we have run quite a number that are specifically focused on the careers of women and the specific nuances to the challenges that we face as women and how to deal with those. And one such webinar is one that we've coming up now to do a little bit of a plug here on the 18th of November, which is all about salary and package negotiations. And this is to, I suppose, kind of surface that the whole kind of gender pay area, and, you know, I suppose supporting our female members in terms of, you know, making sure that they are you know, being valued, and also helps in terms of boosting their confidence. And one of my favorite areas, I have to say, is working with our members who are returning to the workplace following a career break. So whether that's a break following maternity leave, or if it's a longer career break. And I've worked with women, you know, who have been out of the workplace for 3 years, others for 20 years, and it's you know, a great service that we offer here to our members as well. So anybody who's interested in speaking to me about any of those kind of services or their career in general, do reach out to us. The email is at the bottom there, so it's careers@charteredaccountants.ie, and I look forward to hearing from you. So I'll hand back over to Dee, because I know we're a little bit tight on time.
Great, thanks so much, Karen. I might just invite the panelists, to all the speakers, to just quickly pop on their cameras for a second, and we'll just have a very quick fire round. I'm going to start with Loretta, and just somebody was asking, so when you get help, I'm assuming this person means from the Menopause Hub, do your symptoms go away? So is there this magic, you know, bullet or whatever? You could just maybe quickly answer.
Just to say that every woman is different, everyone's menopause is different, but definitely the HRT and the symptom and the treatment can alleviate a lot of symptoms. No one can guarantee, you know, total symptom free, but a lot of women will get a lot of relief coming to our clinic. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Patricia, you're saying you you received that help, which is fantastic to have firsthand knowledge of that. Patricia, maybe I'll just quickly ask you this question. So what if you step into a new role and you feel you have to behave differently? So being that authentic self, but actually having sort of increased responsibilities, a little bit like you mentioned, you know, moving away from, you know, having maybe a group of friends, and then you suddenly become the leader in that group, and then how do you kind of navigate that?
It's a really interesting question, and it's one that both men and women struggle with. It's around understanding that whilst you still have to, you are now the leader, you can still be yourself. You can still lead with empathy. You can still lead with passion. You can still lead with the type of people that you are. But there may be times when you just have to lay down the law and step up to the mark. And it's around understanding what your leadership style is, and to bring your own authenticity to that leadership style.
Fantastic. And then finally, John, I am absolutely dying to hear about that little teaser that you gave us just before we came on air, about Botox and fillers and that impact of actually reading faces. So I'm sitting back to listen to this one.
Yeah, it's like the hidden cost of Botox and fillers. One of the things, like when we, like I said earlier, when we communicate with somebody, we look at the shape of the shoulders, the position the head is in, and then we look at the eyebrows, the lower eyelids, and the corners of the mouth. So to be about 2 million years ago, we were given the gift of empathy. Now, it's a bit of a course at times as well, right? So when we stand face to face with somebody, our mirror receptors in our brains are telling us to copy exactly what we see in the other face, which gives us connection. So if they're happy, we're happy with them. If they're sad, we're sad with them. If they're uncomfortable, we're uncomfortable with them, because we move the same muscles in our faces that they do. You know, that's 16,384 different variations we have. Now, if somebody gets Botox or fillers, what's happening is they're limiting the movement of the face and the movement of the muscles of the face. So it's impossible for them to move the muscles in the same way we do, so that they don't connect with us in the same way, empathy-wise, and we don't connect with them in the same way, empathy-wise. Now, look, I'm not totally anti-Botox and fillers. You know, I do work with some Botox doctors and stuff like that. But there's a lot of research and there's a lot of great work being done in the area of Botox and fillers, like around depression and things around dementia and stuff like that, where they can paralyze muscles into certain positions to release endorphins into the bloodstream. But you know, that whole thing is that we are losing part of our visual communication skills and our non-verbal communication skills, in that we can't be empathetic to somebody who doesn't move their face in the same way we do. And somebody with Botox and fillers can't move their face in the same way we do. And there's actually one thing as well that's just come into my head: lips. This is a fascinating, weird fact. Girls are going out and they're sticking a lot of Botox and fillers into their top lip because they want it to look that way. And they think having a bigger top lip is important. It's not. One of the big things that men will connect with is actually a fatter bottom lips or a bigger bottom lip than a top lip. This is a physiognomy thing. This is this kind of profiling thing. But the most vascular and the most sensitive part of your body is your bottom lip. It's just completely the most sensitive part of the body. So if you have a bigger bottom lip, it suggests that you are more kind of sensitive inclined, or you're more, and I don't even just mean in the sensuality inclined. So not even just in a sex way. It's like you like nicer things. You like nice smells. You like tactile things. And men want to be mothered. So the bigger bottom lip tells you one of the things that they are is more sensitive and more inclined to be tactile and stuff. So even though they won't realize it, men do fancy a bottom lip more than a bigger lip. Top lip.
Thank you. And on that note, John, wow, that's something we can all go away and consider. Really interesting, really interesting. So look, just very quickly, I wanted to say a massive thank you to all of our speakers. I mean, blown away by so much information coming at us all, and taking down lots of notes and everything else. So please, I would implore everybody to get in contact with CA Support if there is an issue and you're talking, you know, from what you've heard today. But more importantly, to the speakers that we've had today, please reach out to them individually on LinkedIn, the Menopause, to John for your headshots and lots of other great advice, and then obviously for Patricia's coaching and leaderships programs as well. So thank you so much, everybody. Look forward to seeing you all again on the platform, or hopefully into the future in the Institute house on Pierce Street. So thanks so much for joining us today. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.